Hi, everyone. My name is Diogo. You can call me Diego. That's just fine. I lived in Germany for quite some time, and I actually got to a point where I was trying, I completely gave up of trying to fix how people would say my name. So Diego is just fine. Like Diego Maradona, everyone knows him. So that's easy. Just a couple of things about me. Like I ended up working at one of the biggest media agencies in the world, from the WPP group and Group M, and ended up working with some of the biggest organizations, and as you may think of, and ended up gaining a lot of experience, and then shifted around, I think around 3 to 4 years ago or so, completely to NGOs, and trying to go on specifically on just freelance work. And today I'm very proud to say that I only work with NGOs or environmental projects, and that's been a blast and unbelievable. I wanted to share sort of a fun fact, and I know in front of the text there, but don't worry, I'll talk about it. But a fun fact to start with, which was that I'm actually based in Portugal, and yesterday I wasn't sure I'd be able to be here because there was as you might know, a complete energy outage in Portugal and Spain, the whole two countries, and a bit of southern France, if I'm not mistaken. And that was different. And I wanted to share a bit of experience because it might be useful to anyone. And it was interesting to see, and all of this, and be without energy. And what do I do now? And at least here in Portugal, we had some 4G and 5G coverage from the cell phone networks. So we were able, without energy, but on our cell phones, we were able to actually connect with each other for a little bit. And it was quite shaky, the connection, but that worked for a little bit. I guess power generators were on. And it was interesting because the second thing that happened, and I saw happening, was the spread of fake news as well, right? So everyone was connecting, and there was like some spreading of fake news, saying that CNN was saying this was a cyber attack, and a lot of people just completely commenting on this was a cyber attack of from Russia or so, and there was already the European Union saying, representative saying that this is condemning the cyber attack, and it was all fake news, right? So it's interesting also, if I hope no one else goes through this. But if you go through it, it's interesting that everyone starts spreading this information, not knowing things, and it's all some ideas that come to mind, and people start spreading that. So be careful with that, and WhatsApp groups. So after that, there was no cell phone coverage around 4 o'clock. So this was around 11:30 a.m. Here in Portugal, 12:30 in Spain, and around 3 or 2:30, 3:30, there was no cell phone coverage at all. So no one, you couldn't connect with anyone, with any family or anything like that. So it was a little bit nerving, right, of not knowing where everyone was, and if they were doing fine. And after the energy, the cut off, and no cell phone coverage, also by the afternoon, you'd have no water, depending where you were. So there was no pressure for the tap water to come out, right? So as learning, so this is a terrible fun fact now that I think about it. So it's not that fun, but I think that it's good to share this experience, and for you to know that ideas of going to your car, turning on the radio to know actually what it's going on, because when the internet isn't on, and apparently the radio stations usually have this backup plan, and it's the easiest way to get information, to some information. So turn on your radios if you have a battery radio, or you can turn on your car to listen to the radio a little bit. So that's also helpful. Grab some water, because water is it's the essential that you cannot live without. So you'll need water, and grab it as fast as you can, and also some food. And this is a fun fact, which is in case of emergency, I don't know if you know this, but you can actually eat dog food or a cat food. Okay, so they are it's something you can go to. Anyway, let's go into bringing some value to your time and to you here. So thank you for being here, first of all. And what I'll be talking about is an affordable way for you to record what are your users doing on your website with a minimum of data loss, and in a GDPR friendly way. So you're complying to what you're doing, and that everyone is also being respected. So that's also important. And remember, this is I come a lot in the past years on a no or low budget solution, right? So this was the solution I found. There are some other solutions you can work with, but this is a very cheap or let's say affordable way to do this, so it doesn't cost anything. You don't have to get any servers or anything like that. The normal disclaimer in talks like this, right? You need to consult with your data protection officer, or seek some legal advice. This does not replace that. Okay, so keep this in mind. And now we know from the talk from Aureli that the DPO is only to advise, right? Not make decisions, and that's interesting. Anyway, let's do this, and let's talk a little bit just quickly about the problem with web analytics in order to understand how, in this case, Matomo will be able to help us. So before everything was sort of being recorded, you have almost every data being recorded from every user that would go into your website, right? The user would go into the website here, and Google Analytics would fire, and that would be great, and you'd be happy, and the information was there. However, with GDPR and e-privacy, now with Google Analytics, now you have two main modes, right? It's the one that is, I think you can all think about and know, which is no consent, no data, right? So if the website has a consent banner, if the user accepts that consent, then Google Analytics fires, right? And if it doesn't, Google Analytics doesn't fire. And that's a way you can implement Google Analytics. And it's actually a GDPR, a quite friendly GDPR way to do it, because no data will be shared, even if it's anonymized with another third party and without consent from the user. Right. So this is very important. And this is a way to do it. So I have clients, for example, that they're just doing this. And this is also a possibility, right? However, we don't know exactly then how many users actually were on the website, or what they did, what were their behavior, at least completely, and it can skew your data a lot. Okay, so this happens. Actually, there's a way, and this will be on the slides that you can download later, but in a Super Week talk, I think some years ago, I actually did a way that you can, before GDPR even, I think, but there's a way you can sort of record the number of blocks. In this case, I was trying to get the number of users that blocked Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager in this case, which would mean that Google Analytics would not load as well, of course. And you can go through this. The URL is in the slide. So download the slides, and you can sort of see how you can record the number of those users in a private way. And the other way that we were talking about was the non-consented event, or the consent mode that Google Analytics came up with, which when the user accesses the website, the JavaScript triggers immediately, sends the event to Google Analytics without consent, right? It's reported as without consent. However, the information is being sent to Google, and then the IP needs to be sent to another third party, and that can be an issue. It was an issue, for example, with Google Fonts, right? So that can be an issue, even if Google then says that it won't not store that information or that IP. Who knows, right? Because they are the ones controlling the data, and you don't know exactly what's happening with that data and how they're transforming that data, right? So it's not that transparent, at least. And even if it was, it would still be a connection outside of your domain, right? That you're not controlling. But then the user then says no. You'd have the non-consented event recorded in BigQuery, which is a possibility to use, and we'll talk about that in a second. And you could have also moduled data, and let's see about that. But regarding the consent event recorded in BigQuery, that sucks, right? Because you'll need to pay a Google Cloud account, or at least have a Google Cloud account. And depending on the amount of queries you do and the amount of users you record, you'll end up paying that cost, right? Also, you'd need to create some SQL queries. Not every marketer knows SQL. And even though there's ChatGPT to help a lot, ChatGPT is not the most efficient one to use SQL, at least at this point. You can ask them to be more efficient, and that will help. But be advised that this might be an issue, right? Because the more queries and the harder, the more data processed in these queries, the higher the cost will be. And then later you'll still have to create a dashboard to see the information of the non-consented users. So a lot of trouble, right? And still you don't have a clear picture of how many users accessed your website. And if you do the non-consented visits in Google Analytics, you'll still have ad blockers that can work. So it can be a little bit of a troublesome to set all this up, and all the hours to set this up. Then you have module data, right, in Google Analytics. However, I think we don't read I know that we don't read all of the needy little things, but we end up missing this information, right? So as you can see here from the prerequisites for having module data. So what is module data? So what Google Analytics will try to do when it has enough data of non-consented users, it will try to replicate that the behavior of those users in Google Analytics. However, this can be tricky because for this to work, it has to have at least 1,000 events per day that from users that denied the consent. So they didn't give consent. So 1,000 1,000 events, and so this is another end, right? Have at least 1,000 daily users sending events of analytics storage granted, meaning the user granted the analytics tool for the last 7 days, right? So 1,000 daily users. So this would only work for websites that have at least this 1,000 daily users. Plus, you'd have to have this 1,000 events per day of storage denied. So it can be quite hard to get this. And still, Google, what it says is that, hey, listen, even within those 28 days to train the model, however, it's possible that even that the additional data won't be sufficient for analytics to train the model, meaning nothing guarantees that you'll get some module data. With module data, I'm sorry, this is really it's the thing for me. But here with module data is that in Google Analytics, you can't differentiate module data, right? So there's no way for you to know what's being moduled, and so what did the system actually create it as data, or what was actually recorded by Google Analytics, because you can't separate both of them. So that can be tricky, and to know exactly which users have been actual users or not. Plus, then you say, oh, listen, but now there's the server side DTM, and that might solve a lot of things. Well, actually, it doesn't, because it's still the same process as module data and non-consented events, right? Whatever you do with the information, now you're just adding a middleman, sort of, in this case, a middle company or a middle service that will then later manage that information. But in terms of GDPR, you shouldn't be able to grab the information and send it without consent as well, right? So this will not solve it. Plus, you'll have to pay the Google Cloud account. You'll have a way more complex system for tags, which is the whole purpose of GTM, which is simplifying the implementation of tags. It's way more complicated with server side. Then good luck managing any other tags, because then you'll have to learn on how every other API can work. So that can take a little bit. So a lot of time also implementing this solution, and a lot of money, at least in terms of implementation, to the minimum, right? So Matomo to the rescue. And what is Matomo? Matomo is a web analytics tool. Before, it was actually called Piwik, and that's where Piwik Pro actually originated. And it's an open source analytics tool. And back then as Piwik, and now as Matomo, it's in the same as WordPress in terms of license. It's the GNU license, which allows you to change the system as you wish, do whatever you want with it. You can't just sell it. That's the thing. But you can do whatever you want with the code, and it's completely transparent because the code is public. More, it has two versions. You have the paid version, which you pay around 22 euros per month, and I will not be talking about that one. But you have that information here on top of the slides. Plus, you have, and this is the one I love, which is the on-premises, which means you install Matomo in your own server, right? And it's not that difficult. It's actually quite easy. And if you want, there's even a WordPress plugin. So you one click and you'll have that Matomo in your website from one day to the other. And this is what I love about Matomo, because it's self-hosted. It means, and I'm sorry for the stretched out picture of Matomo, but this means essentially that you're not sharing information with another company, right? So it actually, you're recording the information, and on your server, the same server the user is already visiting and sharing their IP address with. So that's something that happens. So according to Built With, which is a lovely tool, you can see then later also the statistics here. Matomo has around 540,000 live implementations against 28 million from Google Analytics 4. Okay, so according to Built With. What Built With does is just scanning a bunch of websites, every website it can find, and see if the JavaScript is present anywhere in that website. So you can see around the market, you have, according also to Matomo, sorry, to Built With, you have the Google Analytics main market share there. Also a tool that you end up finding here, and it's quite interesting, which is Cloudflare Web Analytics, which also works with JavaScript, by the way. It's also quite interesting to understand. And we can talk a little bit about that one as well later. But yeah, so this is definitely a market from Google Analytics. So who else uses Matomo? Funny enough, Brave, the privacy browser that you might know, uses Matomo, and it's all these websites I tested it live. They're still using Matomo. And again, I went and I found them because I went through Built With and just saw which websites were using them. And you have, for example, the Austria's railway company using it, Paris City Hall, or the German Foreign Office. And guess what? None of these websites have a consent banner. Why? Because they use Matomo, right? So what they're recording, and we'll see exactly how would that work, but they're recording the user visits without needing the consent because they're using Matomo. Okay, we'll see how that works. So is it just using Matomo solves everything? No, that's not it. You still need to configure and to do see some changes to Matomo. Okay, so what's the problem? Let's go back again. So what's the problem with the consent with Google Analytics? So Google Analytics sets non-essential cookies, and that's not good. So collects personal data like IP, device IDs, and so on. So that's also not good. Transfers of personal data to third parties. So right, so Google Analytics is a third party when they're using when someone's visiting your site, you're sharing that information with a third party. The tracking across sessions and devices can be called as profiling. There's no way you can fit it into a legitimate interest. A legitimate interest is a part in GDPR where you can claim that you have the legitimate interest of using that information as a company, and you need to do an assessment for that. But it will allow you essentially, it would allow you essentially to use personal data under the legitimate interest. However, when you're not using non-essential cookies, you cannot claim legitimate interests according to that. So to the privacy directive, you must inform users clearly and upfront. That's possible. So that's why you'd also can have consent. You can go also to the privacy policy of the website to do this. This would also be a possibility. But yeah, and you'll also need also users will need to be able to revoke the consent they've given, and try to do that with Google Analytics, even though it's possible. You're using a third party, so that information was already shared with whom, with the company, and so it's hard to control, right? And Matomo, on the other hand, can solve a lot of those issues. So it doesn't have cookies, the IPs are completely masked. And how do I know this? This is very interesting because it's in my server. I can see the data, I can see the IPs being recorded, right? And I control that data. And that's very interesting. Also, you can do that in the database and see that information. What else? There's no cross-device. You can have no cross-device tracking. You can also remove any persistent IDs from the platform. There's no data transfer for a third party or to a third party, actually. Again, you'll have to inform the user in the privacy policy that you're using Matomo, but that would be enough to call it as transparency. And yeah, there's the company controls the data completely, so you can actually see which data you're actually recording and remove that data if you want, right? So in order to do this, so and use Matomo, and again, this will allow us to record the users and most of the users, because we won't need consent to do that, right? We'll just need to inform the user, and that should be enough. Okay, and you have some best practices, and you do need to configure Matomo in order to be compliant. Okay, so this is the quick list, but it's quite easy. You just have to force tracking without any cookies, and no cookies will be implemented to the user. Keep in mind, this will influence the metrics of unique users and unique visits. You can and you need to anonymize IPs and user data. So everything, you can have the 2 bytes hashed, and the not the whole IP will be recorded. You can also anonymize IP instead of enhancing visits, replace IDs with synonyms, and also anonymize order ID, so you can't track the user later. Also, you should know this, install Matomo on your server. So you do have the WordPress plugin, but WordPress plugin is a little bit more limited in terms of functionality. So it would be interesting and would be sort of a good tip to, and I learned this the hard way, but it's a good tip to know that installing Matomo will give you much more freedom about the code and how to use Matomo. Also, there's something that you don't want to do, which is you don't want to use Matomo through Google Tag Manager, right? So you can use Matomo through Matomo Tag Manager, and that's a possibility. And if you do this, which is actually usually not blocked by ad blockers or anything like that, at least you'll remove again this service, this third-party service being used in your data set, right? In your data stack, I mean. Also, if you want to go the extra mile, you can have an ad blocker protection and sort of remove this. Remove this ad blocker's way of identifying Matomo. I do remember Simo talking about this, and his understanding at the time. He was saying that it's important to respect that the user is using an ad blocker and he doesn't want to be tracked. And that's fair, right? But it's also fair for your organization to track if you're allowed and if the user doesn't disagree, and to track the user. That's also a way to do it. Okay, so you also have that sort of right. Okay, you have the video then later that you can see on how to do this. Also remember this, which is the data is stored on your server. And if you do have more than 5,000 visits per day, your server can start to get a little bit lazy on getting you the information, right? And it will get some of your capabilities of the servers to retrieve this information and using Matomo. This is a problem only if you have more than 5,000 visits a day. So yeah, this is not for every company or organization. Here's an example where Google Analytics here only fires when there's consented visits, and Matomo that fires without cookies on all visits. And you have, for example, this is an SEO example, but the Google Organic here, you'll have 63,000 sessions. And in Matomo, in this case, we actually recorded 123,000 sessions. Sorry, this is a little bit in Portuguese. But yeah, so this is 118% more visits registered in search engines. So imagine being an SEO and not using Matomo to see how much traffic you're actually bringing into your client. Something I also like to do, and I think, Phil, please warn me about the time. I'm not sure I'm going over a little bit, but let me know. That something that I like to do.
10 minutes, you're okay.
Oh, good. I like to do is use Matomo to register how many times the tag manager or the analytics was blocked, right? So you can do that and send an event to Matomo to see how many times it was actually blocked. Also, you need to know something, which is Matomo is not perfect, and here are some quirks that I think you should know about when using Matomo, which is the first thing is you don't need to just use Matomo. You can use Matomo with GA4, okay? And you don't lose anything with that. So GA4 will only load on consented visits, and that's fine. Matomo will load on every other. That is good. So they will complement each other. And there's something like, for example, Matomo will never be able to give you like the gender of your users or the age of your users, interests. So it's definitely a good idea to leave Google Analytics there. Also to complement any other Google ads that you're running, any other information from Google ads that you're running that might be there in Google Analytics. So use them both. You don't need to switch from one to the other. Also, you need to know Matomo is not GA4, meaning that reports are more like Google Analytics Universal. It's not like you can change every single report and give you the information you want. I think now we're getting used to that, of the sort of the exploring of Google Analytics 4. But in Matomo, there's fixed reports, right? You have behavioral acquisition, and so on. And you have to know this because it's going to be more difficult to manage and retrieve the information you want to see. Also, there's plugins that you can buy for Matomo. They're paid plugins, most of them. If someone shares that plugin, I think it's not under. I think if it's under the GNU, you should be able to share any plugin as much as you want. But the idea here is that you can enhance your Matomo experience. You can customize reports and create reports as you wish. And you can sort of have the Explorer version of GA4 in Matomo itself, but you'll need to buy that plugin in order for you to do that. In order for you to do that, also an A/B testing tool, which is quite interesting, that you want to try. You might want to try. It might be helpful. Something that really helps me with Matomo is having a Looker Studio connection, right? And also now, since March 2025, there's also a Looker Studio connection for WordPress, so which wasn't possible back then. So this will allow you to create reports however you want and change more Matomo to get the data that you'll need. So and play with the data that you registered. So it gives you a little bit more freedom working with Matomo and connecting with other sources like Facebook ads or anything like that, for example. Here's my personal installation checklist that you can go with. And there's like some spam protection you can use, how to implement the cookie banners. There's some code there for duplicating the data layer, for example, from Google Tag Manager and duplicating it to Matomo. That's also a possibility. The purchase tracking script. Anyway, there's a lot of information there. You might want to use the checklist. You just scan that code. Also you'll have that in the slides. My present to you was this beautiful Looker Studio report between Search Console and Matomo. However, that was a blackout yesterday, so I wasn't able to complete the project. But if you do want this Looker Studio, and if you give me more time, I just join me with on LinkedIn, and I'll send it to you. And that's it. Any questions that I can help with, Phil? I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, we've probably got time for maybe one question.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's right. I mean, I've put your LinkedIn profile in this chat so people can go connect with you on there and ask you questions directly as well. So Robert's asked, since you reminded us at the beginning of no consent, no tracking concept, are we sure that we are allowed to track visitors even if they refuse analytics cookies, i.e. deny? It's not just legal or technical questions, but more of an ethical one. If users don't want to be tracked, no tool should track them. It's not a cookie issue. So,
completely agree, right? There's no, I don't disagree with that. It's just like, what are they consenting to, right? And that depends on your cookie banner or your consent banner. So, and as long as you make that clear to the user and honest to the user, I don't see that being an issue at all. Again, you're not identifying or collecting personal data with Matomo there. So yeah, Phil.
A follow-up question on that one,
Please.
Diego. Aren't I right in thinking, don't some of the regulators, I think the French regulator uses Matomo? What I mean is, if a regulator's using it, then it must be okay.
That also helps, definitely. Then the Paris City Hall actually has written in the privacy policy, saying exactly according to the CNIL, which is the Data Protective Office in France, right? It's specifically said, according to CNIL, this is your option to opt out here, and you have that option, and you should give this option to the user, and you can do it in the privacy policy page. But it specifically states that it's in line with the data office there in France.
So, so it sounds like you need to make sure that the tool is also configured like, fingerprints is not accidentally turned on, or there's not like there's not just kind of using a tool that's maybe like hosted in Europe, etc. It's like you still
Yeah.
got to get it double checked by an expert, make sure you haven't done anything kind of pear-shaped.
It's not even just that it's hosted in Europe. It's hosted on your website, right? On your server, right? And it's the whole configuration we did. The whole presentation is that it's configuring configuring Matomo in order to be compliant with GDPR, and only that way you should be able to do this and minimize your data loss.
Cool. That's great. As I said, I've put the speaker feedback into chat. If people want to get access to your slides, so they could submit that speaker feedback,
Please.
and then I think maybe later we can add the Looker Studio report, potentially, like we can append that to those slides. Thank you so much for doing that talk, and especially given the difficulty of the power outage, I'm extremely grateful, and I'm sure the attendees are also very grateful for you speaking. Some great information there, and definitely something I'm going to rewatch later when we put it on YouTube next week. So thank you again, Diego.
Bye. Thank you.